Alright everybody, so in this video I'm going to be going through really just the bare bone basics of Adobe Illustrator. So let's get started. First thing you're going to do is you're just going to open up a new file. There's like 3 different ways that you can do this. You can either go up and click File, New, you can click New File, or because it really doesn't matter what size sheet we're working on right now, you can just click right at the home screen right here, the letter size, which is 612 by 792 points, but that's actually 8.5 by 11 inches. So we're going to just do that right now. And you'll see it opens up a nice, fresh, blank sheet of paper. And we're going to get started. Alright, so first thing you're probably going to notice is that this looks strikingly similar to Adobe Photoshop, which it is, in a sense. It's actually very different, but a lot of the tools you're gonna find familiar. So let's look at the toolbar really quickly. So we have not as many tools as Photoshop, but some of these you might find familiar. So the eyedropper tool, we've definitely used that. The gradient tool's in there. The eraser tool and the brush tool, believe it or not, we don't use very often. We also have these 2 new tools, which we're going to be going through in a second. And of course, the very important zoom tool, which allows you to zoom in and out. So yeah, that is the toolbar. And then we also have this properties panel on the side, which if you don't see that right away, you're just going to want to go up to Window and make sure Properties is there. And if it is checked off already, just make sure you're clicked into that. There's also a Layers panel, but we don't really use it very much in Illustrator, and you'll start to see why as we kind of go through it. It's not super necessary. That is kind of like the interface of Illustrator. So first things first, what I want to do is I want to show you the shape tools. And if you hold down on whatever shape comes up first, for me, the star came up first, but then I switched to the rectangle. You'll see there's about 5 different shapes in here. And, we're going to be working with shapes today primarily. So let's start with the rectangle tool. And the way this works is pretty much exactly the same to how it worked on Photoshop when we used it. You just click and drag to create an actual shape. And then, so like right now I'm making a nice long rectangle. But then if you hold down Shift while you're drawing, it makes it a proportionate shape. So a rectangle creates a square if you hold down Shift, and then like the ellipse tool would create a circle if you held down Shift, because we're just keeping it all proportionate. So now that we know the basics of the shape tools, let's get into these new tools that we haven't really seen before. First one is the selection tool, and it's the one at the very top. This is basically almost like our move tool in Photoshop, where we're able to rotate, we're able to stretch and kind of like warp the shape a little bit. You can also use this tool, as you probably have figured out already, to proportionately change a shape by holding down Shift on your keyboard. Now, if we go back to our toolbar and we go to the other little arrow, but this one is white, you click that, and this is actually very different than the selection tool, because instead of moving around the entire shape, what you get to do with this tool is you get to move around singular points. So you'll see that once I switch from tool to tool, when you're on the white one, which is the direct selection tool, you can only really see the corner points. And that's because what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to click the points, and then you can kind of move them around. You can also hold down Shift for this to get like a nice proportionate angle. It's not like perfect, but it does help get kind of like that proportionate, like perfect right angle or whatever you're looking for. So that's something to keep in mind. Alright, so now I want to direct everybody's attention over to the Properties panel, and I want you to notice that whenever you have an object selected, and I'm going to go back to my selection tool by clicking V on my keyboard, whenever I have a object selected, some of the properties on the Properties panel change, and that's because right now I'm clicking a rectangle, so it's going to change rectangle, it's going to give me all rectangle properties, and then this one is considered a path because it's no longer a rectangle, but it still gives me all the dimensions and whatnot. Now, what the properties panel is there for is it's there to help you easily change the properties of whatever shape or object that you're working with. So, for example, if we were working with text right now instead of a shape, there would be text properties in there. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to use this to change the color of our shapes, because right now they're very boring. They're just white with a black outline. So I'm going to go to Appearance, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to double click this little box, and you'll see there's two options here. First is just simple swatches, so you can just click a simple swatch, or you can go to Color Mixer and you can choose a color from here. Alright, so now my fill color is all done, and I'm going to go to stroke, and I'm going to double click that. And I don't really like having a stroke. I don't feel like I need one right now. You can't really see it anyways. So whenever I want to get rid of a stroke, which I often do as a designer, it kind of depends on your style, if you like it or not. But usually I would get rid of it. But let me show you first before I get rid of it. You can actually make it bigger. Like if you like a nice chunky outline, you can do that as well. But I'm just going to get rid of it for now, just for the sake of this video. Last thing is opacity. So you won't really be able to see the difference on this shape. But let's say I change this shape, right? And I'm going to get rid of my outline again, and then I'll make it like a pink, right? And then if I overlap these two shapes, it doesn't make much of a difference. I mean, you can't really see the pink, but now if I change the opacity of this blue one to like 50% or so, look at that. So now you can kind of see through it. Okay, so this is something that might work for you eventually. All right, so we are also going to look at the other shapes that were in that little shape menu before. Obviously, we talked about how the ellipse tool works very similarly to the rectangle tool. So if I just drag out a shape, it turns into an oval. But if I hold down Shift, it makes a circle. So we know that already. But if you look at the polygon tool or the star tool, I'm going to focus on the star tool for now. There's this unique factor that plays into these tools because not all stars are created equally. So what happens is it gives you kind of like a default, like this is like your normal star with your 5 points. But if you don't just drag out the shape and instead you just do a little double click, a little menu will come up, and then what you're going to do is you're going to change how many points you want. So instead of 5, let's do 8, and check out how different that star looks. And you can just do that multiple times with multiple different, amounts of points. And it's, it comes up with some interesting shapes. And like I said, that works the same way as the polygons. So for example, the normal one just has 6, but if you change it to like 8 or so, you get a little stop sign type of shape. So it's something. It's good to know that you don't have to go out of your way to make these shapes. They are pre-made for you, as long as you know how to use the settings to kind of get everything to work in your favor. All right, so last thing I want to go over just really, really quickly. We'll probably go more in depth with text later, but let's go in with the text tool, and it's actually the type tool. And really, I mean, very, very simple, very similar to when we were in Photoshop. You can do a text box like we did in Photoshop, or you can just click. Text is a lot easier to work with on Illustrator, in my opinion. And that's a big part of that has to do with the properties panel and how thorough it is. And, you can change, like, if you want it to be left aligned, center aligned, or right aligned, all on one panel. You can change the font. It all comes up here. The fill, that you can add a stroke, all that stuff. It's all pretty much the same as Photoshop, but everything is very accessible to you on the properties panel. So you're going to be spending a lot of time here. Another interesting thing I didn't go over yet and it'll be my last thing that I talk about before I end this video, but if we recall, we did a little bit of like flipping horizontally and vertically. The properties panel actually puts that right under the transform tools for you. So like right now you can really see what I'm doing with the text, because it makes the text completely unlegible, basically. It makes it completely mirrored. So you can do that right on the properties panel as well. Alright guys, well that's pretty much it for the super bare bone basics of Adobe Illustrator, and we'll definitely be getting into some more advanced stuff soon, but for now, this is pretty much it. So watch the next video, and we're going to get into the Pathfinder and the Align tools.